Thank you so much. Good morning. I think we're still in the morning hours. It hasn't turned noon yet. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be here for two primary reasons. As Vivek ji said, we launched this wonderful book last year, and I was present for the launch event. And this book was the first step to educate, to inform, to empower women to come forward, to share stories, to normalize conversations, to let women know that they were not alone. And today, as Vivek ji said, it's the next chapter for the next chapter. And it gives me so much optimism to see a company like Abbott build forward on what they've done with just launching the book. And today we're doing this amazing unveiling of this wonderful thing that we will tell you about later that will actually progress and take the conversations that have happened in this book, take it forward to the next step and start normalizing conversations around menopause. So that's the first reason why I'm so thrilled to be here. The second reason is the last time I mentioned this, and I was extremely delighted to see the 3 or 4 men that were in the audience the last time. So I can't tell you how happy it makes me to see men represented in much larger numbers this time around. Because to be really honest, yes, this conversation is about something that women go through, but this entire event is really actually for the men. So all the men that are here, members of the media, all of them, thank you for being here. And we really hope that all of you who are present here today will take the information, the message that is shared today forward and outside of here into your communities, into your homes, into your families, because that's really what we need today. So to start off things, if I might, I actually want to go back to this book. I've read it a couple of times myself. And I want to read a little excerpt from it. Not long, just a paragraph, but I want to read that for you. So this is a piece written by Alexandrina, who's 51 years old, from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And she says, men should be sensitive and supportive toward women going through menopause. Sadly, that's not always the case, particularly in my household. My husband, for example, thinks it's funny when I start to sweat. Usually, when we're watching TV, I'll throw off the blanket and begin to fan myself frantically. And he'll howl with laughter like he's enjoying every moment. So, right here, let's begin this conversation. So, if I might, since I have commented on the men that are present here today, if you don't mind, not to put you on the hot seat or under the spotlight, but I'd like to ask the men that are present here just 1 or 2 questions to begin. Can I?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, super. So let's start with the gentleman with the lovely salt and pepper hair. He looks like he may have had some life experience, so we'll ask him to start.
I think he's wondering why is he sitting at the front.
Thank you.
Sorry. Can I ask just very basically, have you ever been aware of any woman in your life who has undergone or is undergoing or is going through menopause?
Yes, first of all, thank you for asking me the question. And I happened to be at the event that happened last year when we launched the book.
Yes.
And that helped me. I have a mother who's almost 58 now. And I was so ignorant towards what she might have gone through. And it kind of enlightened me on terms of the symptoms that women go through. Yeah. And I happened to go back and have a conversation with her. So that was a very sensitive moment. It was enlightening. At the same time, it helps you bond because you are more aware of things that women go through, and it equips you to kind of deal with that kind of an experience. Yeah. So I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I'm glad that we are spreading awareness about this.
That's amazing. Can I ask, just to build on that, as a son, is it a difficult conversation to start with your mother? Did you find that it was something that she didn't want to discuss or come out with? Or was it something that she was actually waiting for you to possibly approach her and ask?
I could, honestly, I could sense a bit of apprehension because like we have been discussing, and it was mentioned even during the book launch last time, that a lot of women are apprehensive to come out and discuss the symptoms or the excerpt that you read in the book.
Yes.
That was a bit of a humorous take on it, but let's be honest, it's not funny.
Yeah.
The kind of things that they go through, and the kind of initiative helps people raise awareness and makes them sensitive towards this matter. So the husband was actually howling. Had he been aware, he would have been more considerate and caring towards that.
course. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a great initiative.
Yeah, but I just want to tell men present over here that it's not uncommon that women don't talk about this to their families. And in fact, I think there was a study done by Abbott and Ipsos itself that said that 66% of women across the world don't want to talk to their family members about them going through menopause because they don't want to worry them. They don't want the family members to worry about their health concerns. So I think for the longest time, unfortunately, as women, it's been ingrained into us to constantly put our families first so that, we don't cause them any concern about how we're suffering or what our health concerns might be, that kind of shuts us down. But thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, to pick somebody else. Everybody is sweating under their collars a little bit. Ki mujhse mat pucho, mujhse mat pucho. Let me ask the gentleman who's laughing now about it. Chalo, your turn.
All right, yeah.
Has any woman, family member, partner, colleague ever spoken to you about symptoms that they may have been experiencing during menopause?
Lara, I, like most men, was blissfully unaware of the fact that menopause could have such significant impact on a woman's life or in a woman's life, right? Until my aunt, she's my mom's younger sister, she walked up to me, and this is after she watched Bombay Begums, okay? And then she said, you know what? I've been sweating all the time. The fan's on, I switch on the AC, and I'm sweating. And everybody in the family is confused as to why am I sweating. They're saying, open the windows, get out into the open, etc., etc. So I then went ahead and read up a little more about what this condition is all about and realized that it's just not a natural occurrence, but it's much beyond. And there are a significant percentage of women who actually experience severe symptoms, and that could just be beyond sweats, and there's plenty more, including depression and so on and so forth. So I went ahead and not just spent time with her, explaining her about what could be the potential consequences, but also my uncle is pretty much like the gentleman in that story of Alexandria, right? So this man is fairly, let's say, not very sensitive, and therefore I had to sit him down and also kind of walk him through what could be the potential consequences for the family. And ultimately, I could put both of them together and make sure that they actually saw a doctor. So pretty fascinating. I think Bombay Begums is a great example because the protagonists, the female protagonists in that series have very openly spoken about menopause and the potential impact that it could have in women's lives. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that today, at least in mainstream media, through our entertainment, we've got an amazing array of actresses now that are over the age of 30, 35 who are still, headlining amazing content. And I think for me, that's one of the main reasons for my presence here today. I mean, I'm 45 years old, and I don't want to be approaching this chapter of my life with fear. I don't want to be approaching it in ignorance. So I think the idea for me, apart from the fact that I come from a family of very strong women and largely women, so, the experience is already there. But I think for me, it's about not just empowering myself, but as an artist, as an actor, to be able to empower other women. And I think that that's the need of the hour, even within the entertainment industry. But I just want people to know that most often, we're talking about hot flashes, we're talking about things like this with menopause, but there are over 40 symptoms that women can face when they're undergoing menopause. And I'm sure we have a wonderful panel of doctors over here, very esteemed, very senior doctors who will talk about that more in detail. But it's important to understand that we can't just limit it to 1 or 2 or 3 symptoms and say, okay, I understand that, but I choose not to understand the rest of it. And yeah, I think on that note, maybe we'll open up this entire conversation.
Absolutely, and thank you for setting the context so well, and thank you to the two gentlemen here in the
Yes,
audience today
great,
for
great,
sharing
man.
their
Thank
personal
you.
experiences. And what a way to kickstart the panel discussion. We will begin with the panel discussion now, and for that, please join me in welcoming our key experts, as Lara mentioned. Our first panelist for today is Dr. Nauzer Shehryar. He's consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at the PD Hinduja Breach Candy and Holy Family Hospital and former Secretary General of the Federation of Obstetric and Gynecological Societies of India, FOXY. He has also co-authored a book on perimenopause called Finding Your Balance. Dr. Nauzer, lovely having you here today. Thank you. Our next expert on the panel is Dr. Suchitra Pandit. She's consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at the Surya Group of Hospitals in Mumbai. She's also been a former president of FOXY. Dr. Suchitra, thank you for joining us. And our last panelist for today is Dr. Rohita Shetty, Head of Medical Affairs at Abbott in India. Thank you, Dr. Rohita. Now, interestingly, if most of you remember, last year we were also joined by Shaili Chopra. She's the founder of She the People. She's also an author and an entrepreneur who moderated our last year's panel discussion. And we have her here today as well. Thank you, Shaili. Thank you for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me back. Good afternoon. Okay, we're past noon. Could we hear whether you guys are in the house? Oh, no way. I can still see more flashes than sounds. Let's give this another shot. Are you here with us? We're having a very important conversation. We need you invested in this. Well, fabulous to be back and discussing really the most relevant topic of our times. And I feel that we need to do this more often. So maybe, Gayatri, we should make this a monthly conversation. It's so much needed. But I was just thinking, it's possibly useful, even though we talk a lot about menopause, is to just define it once for the interest of those who are still figuring out what is menopause beyond hot flashes. So scientifically, it's when women stop having their periods and even more set of hormones take over their lives, leading to many psychological and physiological changes. It's an interesting period for sure. So let's get into this conversation and see where are we on things and how much of this conversation are we really starting out with? Are we starting enough conversations? So maybe I will start with you, Lara, since you've given me a cue from your last few questions for the men. But I'm going to put the question to you. The last time we were chatting, we talked about your mom, your sister, and how this was a conversation. But your household is slightly different, right? Girls just take over. Where are you on those conversations, and how do you encourage others to literally embrace that conversation by happening?
Sure. So, Shaili, quickly to put into context for people that were not here the last time round, I come from a family where my grandmother is one of 6 sisters, my mother is one of 3 sisters, we're 3 sisters, and me and both my sisters all have daughters. So, I said this the last time, I truly believe that our purpose in life, my purpose on this planet, my family's purpose on this planet is to take womanhood and raise these really strong, opinionated Amazonian women. But that said and done, I think for me, Shaili, I grew up in a household where I'm the youngest of 3. So my father, bless him, was a man who was going through a wife who was going through menopause and his youngest daughter who had just started getting her period. So he's been through the entire gamut of everything. And the conversations in our house, like Vivek said, that the girls don't really have very many filters. And I grew up in a household where, because we were never dictated to the fact that, घर में लड़का है, ऐसे बात नहीं करनी चाहिए, ऐसे कपड़े नहीं पहनने चाहिए. We were given that freedom, growing up also in the armed forces, to really just pursue and follow through with anything that we wanted to. The conversations in our home were very, very normalized conversation. So there was no topic that was taboo. You know, it didn't matter whether it revolved around your period, whether it revolved around menopause, whether it revolved around reproductive rights or, you know, just the whole entire process. And so I think for me, I thankfully enough grew up in a very empowered household. And as I got older and came out into the world, I couldn't understand why there was this need to hide things, share things in whispers, you know, put things under the carpet, shouldn't be talked about, shouldn't be mentioned. And it increasingly infuriated me when I entered the entertainment industry because there was even more so a suppression on any kind of expression of any of these topics, you know. And I think we've all come a really long way from that. And I just also want to quickly add over here that, you know, menopause is not something that lasts for a woman for 3 years, 5 years, you know, or anything like that. Now I'm speaking from experience. Menopause can take you through almost 2 decades of your life, you know, sometimes also if you're lucky, you know. But it's just that we need to understand that it's not something that either a woman or a man in her life or the family around them have to deal with, कि ये सिर्फ 2-3 साल झेलना पड़ेगा, फिर बाकी सब ठीक हो जाएगा, you know. So I think that awareness needs to be also there, wherein comes in the sensitivity. And I think that's what we're talking about here today, is about being sensitive to this, not just the next chapter, this wonderful chapter in a woman's life.
You know, there's so many things to unpack in that experience that you've shared, including this awareness and self-awareness. So, Doc, I'll come to you. Dr. Shehryar, talk to us about whether women that you meet who are going through their menopause are even aware that they are, and are they willing to embrace the changes? Because we do talk about awareness as if, you know, the media puts one headline and the world gets to know, and that's not the story. Many of our mothers still don't know the term, don't understand its nuances. So perhaps your experiences with the women that you meet.
So first I'm going to take off from what Lara and you just said. One of my favorite quotes is Anasuya Sen-Gupta, who said, "Too many women in too many countries speaking the same language of silence." It just came to me.
Yeah.
I'm also going to share some very interesting statistic I came across a few months ago. For the first time in human history, there are more grandparents in the world than grandchildren. Human populations are getting older. We are going to spend more and more of our life after a certain age. And let's face it, people are having fewer children. So my personal involvement started from the fact that being in practice for 3 decades, the women you look after stay with you. A gynecologist, and I'm so happy that Lara's family is just all women, because we gynecologists love the fact that we look after women and don't have to look after men. Those women are now coming to me in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. They stay with you, and they are coming to me with their issues of the midlife.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at these issues of the midlife, you realize that every woman does it differently, and sometimes doesn't even know what she's doing. There was a study from Engender Health in the UK which said that 65% of women in the menopause transition, and I think this is an underestimate, will have some symptoms. Of these, about 40% will be quite severe, and 10% it would be completely disruptive, right? That's the kind of half of your population is going to go through this. 65% of them are going to go through some symptoms, and 10% of that half of the world's population are going through go through distressing symptoms, right? Now the problem is sometimes these symptoms go unrecognized. So to answer your question, I would have to start with the term perimenopause. Menopause event, last period, momentary, 12 months no periods, you're menopausal. But this starts at least 6 years before, and that's the confusion. A woman comes to me and says, I have menstrual disturbances, but I know what's happening. I'm getting my hot flushes, but I still menstruate. I'm getting all these mood issues, but I'm menstruating. And finally, of course, you know, menopause, if there's one term I use for menopause, it's dryness. dryness, dryness, dryness. I'm menstruating. So that's the perimenopause. Now, when a woman comes to a doctor, there is another angle to it. I remember Oprah Winfrey once saying that I went to 5 specialist doctors and none of them told me I was menopausing. Oprah Winfrey, the best doctors in the US. Doctors see things from their perspective. You go to them with flushes and palpitations, they'll check out your heart. The dermatologist will do the skin, the psychiatrist will say you're depressed. Excuse me, again, we have a house in Lonavala. My contractor comes to me a few months ago and says, my wife had a cardiac episode. And we've done all the investigations and I don't know what we're going to do. And I said, okay, how old is she? 47. Is she getting a period? She had a hysterectomy a few months ago. That poor woman was having a hot flush in the middle of the night and everyone thought she was having a cardiac arrest. Okay? So this is where things are getting better. They're getting better because information is out there. The information has to be better. The information shouldn't be something that puts fear, but puts confidence.
You know, I want to briefly ask you something because you gave the example of Oprah, right? We're talking about the developed market. We're talking about somebody who's extremely confident, etc. Do you think that there is a tendency among doctors, as it is in our conditioning, to mask that they're going through menopause? Because there's also a fear that's on the other side. Just curious.
So right. Now, thanks to the book, we've been interacting with a lot of women and we hear so many stories from women. Medicine is all about stories. Suchitra and me hear stories every day. Yes. So our experience is not one woman's, but 1,000 women's. A woman told me she went to a doctor with classic menopausal symptoms. Wonderful doctor. She loved him. He delivered her babies. And she says, when I told him, you know what he did, doc? He stood up, he shut my file and he says, this is going to last for the next 2 or 3 years. Don't worry, it's going to be gone. When you take care of this woman, and this is something Suchitra and me were just conversing, you need to give time, you need to listen, you need to counsel, and unfortunately, our model of medicine has always been very reactive. We fix things. I'm sorry, you're not supposed to be just fixing things. You're supposed to be listening, hearing, and 50% of problems are gone, and the remaining 50% today, I must say this here, and this is what you've got to convey, because this is a great group. This is the group which is going to put things out there. Medical therapy is evidence-based to help that individual woman who needs it. This misconception women have the moment I say hormones and they panic. I'm sorry. There are cases this is the treatment of choice and you should be open to it. But what you have to do is give them the tools to go and demand the care that they deserve. There's one line I would like to say about hormones is, please understand hormone therapy is researched. Whether it's the pill or whether it's hormone therapy, no medication in the history of mankind has been researched as much. Personally, I always tell the patient, this is the safest thing for you. Hormones are safe. Some women are dangerous. So we just have to find out who shouldn't be taking it, and everyone else, if they need it, can take them very safely.
Okay, Dr. Pandit, part of what we all are discussing here also puts the onus of being self-aware, raising your hand, making that call to a doctor on the women going through this. And that'll happen when they're more and more aware of the symptoms. So first part of my question is, do you really feel as a doc that women are even getting aware? And second part of it is that what is it that you tell them to watch out for in order for them to raise that mild alarm to say, okay, let me just go meet somebody and get this going on a journey that'll solve it or guide me?
Right. Thanks, Shirley. As Dr. Nozer rightly pointed out, women are not as aware of what they're going through simply because they don't want to accept that they have a problem. Now, as he mentioned figures, the Indian figures, some of them mentioned that 80% of women go through the menopause, and probably it's just mild or moderate symptoms. But there are those 10 to 12% who are very severe, and probably they will come up. But what about the remaining? Why are they suffering in silence? So, some of the things like, hot flushes, night sweats, simple thing like falling of hair, irritability, confusions, the typical mind fog that women talk about, and then backaches. And some of them are, like having vaginal dryness, genitourinary symptoms. They will talk about the irregular menses, but then they don't want to come forward. And if they ignore these symptoms, these can get more severe. And the severe ones they need to know about is, these hot flushes and night sweats can become so severe, they affect your sleep patterns. And if your sleep patterns are affected, you are more depressed, your quality of work suffers. Whether you're a homemaker or whether, you're working somewhere, both the things, the quality of life quotient is very, very important. And, the long-term symptoms women need to know. If you suffer for a long time, your heart is not going to be with you. One misconception I'd like to tell you that most of the people tend to think women don't get heart attacks. It's only the men who get it. But remember, at 48, 49, 50, our hormones, our estrogen has fallen down and we are as predisposed to cardiac events as men are. So therefore, and there's also a redistribution of abdominal fat because, the lipid friendly, we call lipids, it's the fats. So the heart friendly fats go down and the unfriendly ones start going up. And because of the redistribution of the fat, women also tend to put on a lot of weight around the belly. The metabolism reduces unless you're really, someone like Lara Dutta who's into, a lot of physical activity. And today you're seeing a lot more people doing that. But unless they learn that, they will have long-term consequences. And osteoporosis, we tend to think osteoporosis is a silent killer. The bones get brittle, and because of the vasomotor symptoms, the incidence of falls, the impact of the falls, the incidence of fractures goes high. So these are the long-term problems. And remember, breast cancer is something, women fear. But in the 5th and the 6th decade of life, that's the time it's detected the most. So prevention, nobody can prevent breast cancer, but at least you can diagnose it much more earlier. I mean, we're not trying to get medical, but these are some of the realities. And Alzheimer's, nobody knows really what causes it. But we definitely know that when you're in the postmenopausal phase, more women get into it. So activity-wise, mental activity, physical activity, all these things women need to know. So change of your lifestyles. Eating well, it's easy to say eat well, but what is eating well? A balanced diet. Good carbs, good amount of proteins, less of fats. Eat at the right time. We tend to, Indian women or Indian families tend to eat late at night, 10 o'clock, 10:30 when the husband comes. And then, she'll just clear up and then they are in bed watching telly. So that is one of the worst exercises one can do, is getting into bed soon after. So eat in time, drink plenty of fluids, have lots of fruits, nuts. And today there are so many veggies around which are different. You can have the salads, you can have whatever, but get onto a good diet, exercise well, walk well, think positive, sleep well. I think that's so important, and have that health consciousness. So talk about your symptoms, don't confine it to yourself, and don't suffer silently. We're all there. We as doctors are there. We as influencers are there to tell women, speak up. And that's what they have to do.
At an individual level, at a corporation level, I know companies want to talk about it, but they'll do it on that one single day while sending one emailer, and it's not a word that they're very comfortable with, as they haven't been in the case of menstruation either. But I think one of the things that makes this audience here and the panel here very, very empowering is that we are speaking up, we are saying the terms they need to be called, and we're normalizing it. So from a conversation starter point of view, where does a corporation begin and how does a work environment change?
So Shelly, before I get to the answer to your question, just a quick update. So Abbott, so we are one of the women leaders, the therapy of women's health, so we are leaders, and we are committed to empowering women live healthy, take control of their own health, and we ensure and strive seamlessly to support them at every stage of their lives. So starting from a menarche to a menopause. So coming to menopause, so Shelly, I would like to tell you that there was a large-scale, robust survey which was conducted by Abbott. Okay, so this survey was basically to understand the local experience, the quality of life impacting the women in the menopausal space, okay, and what do the caregivers feel about these women. So on this survey, there is one stat which I would like to tell you. So 73% of women, when I say women, these are the working women in the menopausal age group. They feel the need to take leave from work because of the menopausal symptoms. So this is India. But when I have to talk on the global front, so there is a study which was done in the United Kingdoms. So this was also a study done in the working population by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. Even that study stated a 63% increase in the stress level in the menopausal age group women because of these symptoms. So in all, the working women, as you rightly mentioned, so these women are in that stage of the career where they're actually doing amazingly well. They are leaders in the industry, they are assets to the organization. These leaders make a difference to the lives of the people they are working alongside. So it's our moral duty to support these women. So when you talk about Abbott, so we do our bit. Firstly, we do tie up with healthcare professionals and societies to make women menopause aware. They're supposed to know what they're supposed to expect when they transition into this stage of life. We've launched the next chapter so that there are more authentic stories to relate to and they can have more transparent and open conversation. And Shaili, as Lara had mentioned, there's something coming up very soon in the next few minutes for the audience out here, and a very interesting tool which will also help these working women live life better and live life to the fullest.
So, you know, one of the things that we shouldn't forget is at the time that women get their menopause symptoms in the working environment, they're actually no longer workers, they're leaders.
Absolutely.
And they literally are at the place where they could not just drive some change, they could make the men uncomfortable. And why do I use the word uncomfortable? Because it takes time for them to get used to understanding what are the various things that women go through at the workplace and how much of the workplace goes back with them, which is another big part of their stress that you talked about. So let's talk about stress. I think you kind of talked about the film industry and the entertainment industry. Other than somebody mentioning Bombay Begums and hopefully there'll be more stuff coming up, we don't like talking about these things, right? I mean, women's health. You only go to doctors for good news. Pretty much it. Just curious what your experience is and if you are sensing change. The laughter gives it away.
See, let's break it down. I mean, it's wonderful, of course, and it's very, very important to talk about statistics, and it's very, very important to talk about the very technical aspects, the medical aspects of menopause. But I think the one thing that we can all relate to is personal stories, right? Personal experiences. That's what makes it palatable. That's what makes it say, oh, that happened to me. I get that. So for me, Shaili, I mean, I've been in an industry, everybody knows, is very, very male-driven. I mean, we're fighting many things on many levels, and some wonderful women that have come before me have paved the path, made it easier for me. I continue to do the same for women that will come after me. So, I mean, we won't bring them up here, but there are many things: pay parity, misogyny, inclusion, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that I've faced in my workspace itself is male colleagues telling me years ago, what is wrong with you? Are you on your period or what? Really? And I can promise you, I cannot be the only woman who's experienced that. I mean, we face it in every industry, regardless of where we're at, that why are you being so crabby today? What's gotten into you? Are you on your period? Yeah, maybe I am, but so what? It doesn't change me from the way that I am on any other day, excuse me. That's signing up for inhabiting this planet with the opposite sex called women, But again, to put it into context, let me describe. So the man that I'm married to, wonderful man, Mr. Mahesh Bhupati, is a sports person, right? He's been taught since childhood to grind through the pain. I mean, the man is a wall, literally. You can hit him with a Grand Slam win. You can hit him with a loss at the final. You can hit him with a first round loss. The expression and the whatever is exactly the same because that's how he's been reared. Grind through the pain. Now, for a man like that, to understand why the woman in his life has suddenly gone off the rails one day, I mean, for him, he hasn't been raised in the manner to understand that there needs to be empathy, or there needs to be understanding, or there needs to be sensitivity. And then divine justice, the man has had a wonderful baby girl, So now he's got his mom, he's got his sister, who's his only sibling, he's got his wife, and then he's got his daughter. And I have to say, commendable, it's amazing how much all we women in his life have rallied around turning this man who's been raised in a very specific way to be a certain, kind of person to thrive in his industry, to be sensitive to what a woman around him is going through. So today in our family, these conversations are very normal. I mean, sometimes there are days I can't remember why I've walked into the room, or, कि अभी उसको आज को क्या बोलूं कि क्या खाना पकाओ, and I know what I want to go and tell him, but then by the time I've gone in there, it's just gone. It's brain fog. So the conversation in the house is very normal. I'm like, okay, please remind me again, what is it that I wanted to do? Because I seem to be, my menopausal brain has sort of kicked in, or premenopause, whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter is that we talk about these things very normally in the house. If I am genuinely feeling something, unfortunately for my husband, I'm a very expressive person. And I find great relief in just telling somebody what I'm going through, so it's laid out on him. So I just want to tell women as well that don't feel guarded, or don't feel scared, or don't feel, held back in any which way. That I can't say this to my spouse, or my partner, or my father, or my son, or my colleague. I promise you, they can handle it. Every single man on this planet will find a way to handle it. And that shouldn't be the reason for you to hold back. And
because you are already handling it anyway, right? So why can't the others too? Okay. You want to finish that?
No, I'm going to, it's going to get really long, so I'm going to pass it over.
Okay, good. All right. But one thing that that sort of drives this whole idea of why we even come down to having these conversations is to the point that Lara made about the daughter came around, right? Essentially, that means we need to start young. And I think that's my perfect segue to ask Dr. Pandit about how she's trying to change this narrative at a fairly early stage so that young people know that this is something that will come at them, they're better prepared, and most importantly, they will reach out to experts for advice.
Right. Thanks, Shelley. Again, when I was president of our federation, Foxy, I had this concept of youth melas, and youth melas was basically for empowering young boys and girls between the age groups of 15 to 20 or 14 to 20, and we were talking to them about reproductive health and how do you promote the concept of wellness and exercise and nutrition. And we had one session on how do you make your bones stronger, how do you build up the bone mineral density of the bones. So we should tell them, well, at the age of 25 you have the maximum peak bone mass, so eat well, have lots of milk, calcium, exercise, expose yourself to the sun so that you get your vitamin D, and your bones will be strong because it's your reserve for the future. And remember, today we are the youngest population in the world, but 2 decades down the line we are going to be the oldest population. So we are going to have a lot of men and women above the age of 45, 50, and then going on to the geriatric side. So you have to learn to take care of yourselves right from now, build a healthy future, and be sensitive to what the older people in the house are going through, particularly your mothers. And believe me, I had a woman who came into my OPD and she was 51. She just had her menopause and she was having severe problems. Her daughter-in-law brought her and she said, doc, I have 3 sons. My older son is married and it was my daughter-in-law who heard me out. She saw me getting those hot flushes, night sweats, irritability, tiredness, and she brought me. And I'm so glad that the younger people now are aware. And naturally, if the mother takes care of her daughter at her menarche, when she starts her periods, making sure she's comfortable, the daughter should also do a favor in return. And not just to her mother, but to her mother-in-law or to anyone at work. So I think, that's what we taught them at the youth melas, to be sensitive towards the needs of the growing body. You want a good adolescence, you want a good reproductive period, but you also want a healthy perimenopause and a postmenopausal period. And through our associations, we have the Indian Menopause Society, you have Foxy, and so many other organizations who work together with NGOs to have, it's like having small little workshops where you're encouraging doctors, general practitioners, and even young gynecology students to be sensitive to this particular issue. Don't just talk about surgery. It's also creating awareness. It requires a little bit of hand-holding, skills to understand that this woman is having a problem and what can we do. And I think because everybody gets together and with the farmers, some of the farmers are doing really excellent philanthropic work like Abbott, getting together to cater to the women's needs so more and more women can freely discuss this issue and come forward for help. My only advice is, again, women should not keep things to themselves. I have been telling women, give yourself a birthday present. And what's a birthday present? It's not a dress or it's not a ring. A health checkup, which tells you that you are well. It's not just the bloods, but it's also the breast examination, the pelvic ultrasound, preventive measures, and talk to the doctor about your problems and let them then direct you to a place where you can get. It's not just about drugs, not just prescriptions, but it's also how you can handle that situation in a much more better way. And I'm glad things are moving forward. Things have changed, from a decade ago to what it is now. And I am hoping that the younger people are very, very savvy on the Instagram and on the Facebook, and they will start talking about this. And that change is definitely going to be there.
No, absolutely. In fact, we at She the People call this the Sisterhood of Wellness. And that is literally a bit like what she said. Find the woman next to you, tell her if she's not paying enough attention to her health, or at least open up a dialogue instead of just talking about what else to buy or where else to hang out. But let's look at one aspect which I think we all have sort of spoken about in the underbed of our conversations, which is the mental health changes that emerge. And Dr. Sherian, I'd like you to spend a little more time double-clicking on that because, it always ends up being a corollary to the larger issue, but sometimes it can be a central symptom that needs more addressal. So, your thoughts?
So, certain things about menopause are like obvious. They'll burst out. The flushes, the night sweats. There are certain things, maybe you depend upon doctors, the osteopenia, the osteoporosis, the heart. But there's something that's been overlooked for too long, not just in the midlife, but in healthcare in general, and that's mental and emotional health. And I was just seeing the data you put out, and if you're talking about 60% of women experiencing depression at some point and 40% experience anxiety, that's a lot. You also quoted a UK study, and in the UK, because of this, about 45% of working women actually considered quitting their jobs. Right? That's your most valuable resource, almost thinking of walking out of the door. Unacceptable. Now the problem with these issues very often is that they are so varied that it's difficult to recognize. So if I was to classify it, basically say anxiety, depression, and the one thing a lot of women will resonate with is anger. They fly off the handle very easily. I often say mostly justified, but like Lara said, it's very difficult for society and the family to accept it. If I was to say causes, there is a hormonal reason. There's no doubt about it. There is a life situation reason where she is, what she has achieved and what is now disrupted, and there is a relationship reason. Now first let me just quickly talk about the hormonal reasons. When there are dramatic changes in hormones, women will have issues coping with emotional health. Look at the wake-up calls a woman has in her life. 12 times a year before her periods, her hormones crash and she goes through something. It's PMS. Every time she has a baby, her hormones crash and she could go through the blues or depression. I call these wake-up calls. In fact, if you are experiencing this, be warned that menopause might bring these issues for you, and you be prepared for them and deal with them. Life situation, you've given so much, you've invested so much, you've led a double life. You've been professional and you've been personal, you've been family, and suddenly you find people are busier, spouse or partner more successful, maybe a little more focused on other things, children getting less dependent upon you, and that's where the relationships also come in. How do you approach this? Deal with the hormonal, if you need to deal with the hormonal, and very often it's like you fix flushes and fix the sleep, you'll probably become better. I'm not even talking about the brain fog that Lara referred to and the cognitive issues Suchitra referred to. Let's leave them aside, too big a field. This is the time, again, as mentioned by us here, that you have to recognize and you have to seek help and assistance. The help and assistance can come professional. Suchitra, for me, another aspect is not just the woman, but usually, thankfully, nowadays they come with their partners. It's the partner's responsibility to take some role in her health. He brings the woman for the checkup every year after her birthday. It's his contribution, not her responsibility. Have a conversation with the people in your life. Do a sit down around the table and say, you know what, mom's going through something that all women go through. Mom has been there, invested in you all her life. This is payback time. And sometimes, this is when a woman also reaches the end of her tether. She probably now stands up, something she should have done 10 or 15 years ago. And that's inconvenient for people at work, inconvenient for the family, too bad. Like you rightly said, it's their problem, live with it. But at least communicate it. Trust me, when this communication happens, a lot of things get better. And that's where influencers come in, because your followers are not just women, they're also the men. Yeah. And trust me, they would want to do better if they knew how to. Yeah. And finally, something small, like for me, anger is the biggest thing my patients tell me about. I keep flying off my anger. So I say, let's work out a strategy. If you feel it boiling up inside you, you shall walk away and go to another room. And you will tell your family that if mom's walking away, you will not follow her, you will not pester her, you will not ask her what happened, give her space, she will be back in 10 minutes and she will handle it more rationally. Because if she didn't do this, she'd spend the next 24 hours feeling guilty and terrible that I said things I shouldn't have. So these are small things, these don't need medications. But again, I'm going to stress here, I have all the respect for my colleagues, the psychiatrists and the counselors, and it's time to call out the big guns when required, but for that you have to recognize it. Now to recognize it is some very simple things you can do. There are online scales where you can give yourself a self-test, which will actually tell you where you are. There's something called a DAS scale. We modified it for a book. It will tell you anxiety, anger, depression, and then you can deal with it a lot better. This is mental health. I just have to finish by mentioning one other aspect, which is the elephant in the room which is not recognized, and that is sexuality. Yeah. This is something people have suffered in silence, and that is unacceptable. Part of it is physical, that can be fixed. Hormones can make the vaginal dryness and things better. This is something with a little bit of counseling and focus. I remember when we wrote a book and sent it to our friends for review, a very, very dear friend who's like an influencer type said, but you haven't told women how often they're supposed to have sex. Tough one. Yeah. And we actually made a recommendation, because unless you put it on the agenda, that's another thing that will be neglected and it should not be.
Wow, what a discussion. Do you agree? I think that was amazing, very insightful, and there were so many moments which I could relate to, especially when, identifying the period when my mom underwent menopause. So, all those memories were kind of coming back to me. But thank you for such an insightful and such a lovely discussion. Thank you.
I know you thought about your mom. I'm thinking like, I'm getting in here like very soon. What's my plan?
So can I just say a one-liner?
Sure.
Yeah. For young girls, we always say, give them wings, let them fly. For the young girls. For the women who are the mature women that we are talking about, I always say, give them your time, hear them out, and see them conquer the world. So that's what we must.
Thank you. All right, so while we are here to discuss menopause, but we are also here for another reason, is to change things. Yes, we want to change a lot of things around us. so more people not just better understand menopause, but also feel encouraged to have more meaningful conversations. And this brings us to the excitement and the fun thing that we were talking about at the beginning. For that, I would like to welcome Nandini Goswami, Director and Head, Public Affairs for Abbott in India. Nandini?
Thank you, Gayatri. And I think that was indeed a wonderful conversation. A lot of things I think just crosses your mind and say, oops.
Or mine. Yes, this was the fun and the exciting tool that we were talking about. As Nandini rightly said, this is a conversation starter to the most, to a condition which is not talked about. Simple.
Yeah.
You can't see the cards here, but we have placed 4 cards which are actually a part of the game. So to your left-hand side, you can see that we have actually kept the conversation starter. So once you open that box, you will find a deck of 90 cards. But since we were to play the game today with you, we made it fairly simple. So we have just selected 4 cards. What you have to do is you just have to look at your card, read out the scenario for your audience, and choose one option which is listed on the card, which is more relevant to you. And if you could also share a personal anecdote or a personal experience, I think that would be great. So Shelly, why don't we begin with you?
Okay, let's do this.
Women know that they are not alone.
Okay, to help other women know that they're not alone, I started a support group. I think all of you know that in one sense. Began writing a blog about my experiences when blogs were in. But actually, the real story really from my side would be that I started believing in the Sisterhood of Wellness. And that is really true because many times I would think that, you know, the way we are raised, right, you've got to just get this done. And I would say each time more and more women who I spoke to would say, to get this done, I reinvent the wheel every day. I learn from scratch. And that just seemed like such a futile exercise. It seemed like, why should I have to learn this from scratch if somebody else has solved this problem? Where is she? Why don't I find her, right? And that became such a big thing for me to drive, saying, let's find that woman who's done parenting at 35 for the first time. That was me, and I wanted somebody to tell me how do you become a mom at 35 and deal with it. Or, you know, entering a phase when you're saying, I'm on my 4th startup. Where is a person who can tell me how is it to start, fail, grow again? So I think in many ways, that is really the real truth that I have enjoyed coming face to face. And many ways, it's what I feel when I went across to another woman. She said, you know what? I was looking for someone like you too. So it was about making that beginning and saying that this is really the person I think I want to be. This is not the real or made up. This is my true experience. It may be sometimes good, sometimes ugly, but it's what it is. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. My turn. Okay. To help other women in my life going through menopause, I plan to, write a booklet about my experience, made up start a chat group where we can share our experience or mine. Okay.
You know, I can imagine you doing all these things, but we want to hear what you would.
Yes, I could possibly do all of these things. But, guys, I think the most important thing is that all of us today, with everything that we're exposed to, right, everything that we have access to, we've all become Google, Instagram, TikTok doctors. All of us. So, even for women, we're bombarded constantly on an everyday basis with so much information. Today, if you really want to know what you're going through, you by mistake click on one thing and it will throw up, the machinery will throw up multiple posts about the same thing. So I could be reading about circadian health and intermittent fasting, and it all sounds amazing fixes to what I am going through. But at the end of the day, are they the experts? Are they the people who really know what my personal experience is? And because it's worked for someone else, is it going to work for me? So, you know what? No, I do not want to write a booklet. I want to be part of something like the launch of the Next Chapter book. I want it to come from people who have put in time, effort, money, research on actually getting you the right kind of information. I want to be part of a starter kit, which actually moves forward from where we actually left off, which gives you an opportunity. I don't know where to start. All this sounds amazing, but am I really going to go home now and sit down and say, "Acha beta, aa jao, let's talk about menopause"? Where do we begin? So this is incredible. I would actually encourage every single man here, take even 2 or 3 of these cards, carry them around in your pocket. And you know what? Yes, create the opportunity to maybe whip one out. I don't know. It can become your next party trick. Make it your own it. Let it be something that you can actually start by initiating a conversation rather than waiting for it to happen. And I think also, again, doctor, see, this is what I'm telling you. I came here with a thought and I had it, and now it's gone because it's brain fog. And also, I'm talking really fast, so I keep missing what I wanted to say. But this really is, I think, for me, the important part of what I really want to do with menopause. And most importantly, I want to be able to share experiences like this with people who are the experts. So to be on this stage today with Dr. Noser, to be here with Dr. Pandit is so empowering for me. And I know that I read all these terms when I'm looking through things because I have access to it. So I'm reading about HRT and I'm reading about, hormone replacement therapy. But it's easy for me to have access to it, not necessarily to a larger part of the Indian women audience. So I know that today when I talk about it, being who I am, it will ring true to somebody else. Someone might actually say, किस चीज़ की बात कर रही है? क्या है ये HRT? They might actually get up to go and do their own research or even speak to their medical practitioner, about it. So I think that for me, the most important thing that I can do is not stop talking, much to everybody else's dismay.
We wish you would never stop talking and continue to have conversations on menopause. Thank you, Lara. All right, and now, of course, Riri.
Okay, so talking to my
Just for sharing their personal experiences and insights with us. Thank you so much. Just one last thing that we would want to say before we, kind of wrap up today's session is we hope that this conversation starter actually anchors or fuels more conversations, becomes like an important tool not only for women but for the men and for the entire support group around women to kind of help them have conversations and make sure that they get the right support at the right time. On that note, thank you so much for joining us today in this most important conversation. Thank you to our panelists and to our influencers. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to gather once again very soon to take this conversation forward. On that note, thank you so much. Please stay around, mingle, have conversations.
So I think it's very exciting to be part of something with Abbott. पिछले साल हमने ये किताब launch की थी, The Next Chapter for Women, and today we're here to follow up on that and launch a kit that's a conversation starter kit on menopause. So a lot of times हमने menopause सुना है, हम बहुत सारे औरतों को जानते भी हैं जो who are going through menopause, लेकिन उनसे dialogue कैसे शुरू करें, इस चीज़ के बारे में उनसे पूछे कैसे. And most women also are very reluctant to really talk about their experiences because they fear not being understood. So I think this is a fantastic initiative by Abbott to really allow conversations to become normalized, to be free flowing, to give you a chance to even ask your mom, your wife, your sisters, your sister in laws, people in your family, women, female members, about their experience with menopause and understand it a little better yourself as well. मिथ नहीं है, कोई मिथ नहीं है, ये बहुत ही नॉर्मल प्रोसेस है. सो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि वी आर डीलिंग विद सम मिथिकल क्रीचर दैट्स कम आउट ऑफ नोवेयर. दिस इज़ वेरी मच अ पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ लाइफ. और जैसे किताब का जो टाइटल है द नेक्स्ट चैप्टर, इट्स अ नॉर्मल ट्रांजिशन. हर औरत इस ट्रांजिशन के थ्रू चलती है. इट्स जस्ट अंडरस्टैंडिंग इट बेटर टू हेल्प द वुमन हु इज़ गोइंग थ्रू दैट डील विद इट, गो थ्रू इट in a way that's more empowering than to be frightened by what they're going through. Yeah, I would say this is an amazing opportunity. This starter kit is really, really simple. This conversation kit, I would really empower women, encourage women to get it. It will really help you start conversations within your homes, within your workplaces, with colleagues, with family members, with support groups. And ज़्यादातर से औरतें दूसरे औरतों से बात करते हैं इन चीज़ों के बारे में, लेकिन वो अपने ज़्यादातर से family members, male colleagues के साथ बात नहीं करते हैं. So I think this is a very simple, without it being, intrusive, and without it being, it's a very gentle way to start a conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.